The legislature is called into session. Senator Respicio, you are recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I move that we adopt the agenda dated December 29, 2008.
On the motion, no objections, so ordered. I'd like to ask Senator Gutherts if you can lead us in prayer. Please stand.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Dear Father, as we assemble here this morning to meet for the last time as the 29th Guam Legislature, we ask for your guidance and intercession. And we ask that you bless all of our colleagues, particularly our 3 colleagues who will be leaving us. Please bless Senator Forbes, Senator Ishizaki, and Senator Shimizu. We thank them for their many contributions to the work of the 29th Guam Legislature. And we ask them to stay close and to continue sharing their wisdom and leadership with the community. Our message today, Father, is very simple. And I'd like to share it with my colleagues and the staff of this legislature today. Always remember that the 10 Commandments are not the 10 suggestions. Amen.
I'd like to ask Senator B.J. Cruz to lead us in the Chamorro, Anogi Chamorro, and Senator Senator Calvo, and the national anthem.
Panogi Chamorro, Purita Nota, Kantai Matunanya Gitodu Iluka. Para y honra, para y gloria, a viva islas en para y honra, para y gloria, a viva islas en todo y tiempo y paz para Zangini langit na bendición, contra peligro na pansafuha, Deus protege San Guam, contra peligro na pansafuha, Deus protege San Guam. See, by the dawn's early light, what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last evening, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, o'er the ramparts we watched, were so gallantly seen, and the rockets red glare above the thirsty air, gave through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Can the clerks please take roll call?
Senator Blas. Senator Calvo. Senator Cruz. Senator Espadon. Speaker Forbes. Senator Gutherts. Senator Ishizaki. Senator Lujan. Senator Munya Barnes. Senator Palacios. Speaker Pangilinan. Senator Respicio. Senator Shimizu. Senator Tenorio. Speaker Wampa.
Present.
Madam Speaker, I wish to report there is a quorum.
Thank you. Senator Respicio, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I call for the approval of the Legislative Journal dated 12/22 to 12/23/2008 that be approved subject to corrections.
On the motion without objection, so ordered.
Madam Speaker, there are communications and petitions, and I move that they be appended to today's session journal.
On the motion without any objection, so ordered.
Madam Speaker, I move that if there are any messages from Imegalahin Guahan, that they also be appended to today's session journal.
On the motion without objection, so ordered.
Madam Speaker, I move that there are reports, those reports of standing committees, I move that they be appended to today's session journal as well.
On the motion without any objection, so ordered.
Madam Speaker, there are no reports of select committees. And in the introduction and first reading of bills and resolutions, there have been no bills or resolutions introduced as of the last session. So I'd like to go
On
to motions. Yeah.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My first motion is that any resolution in commendatory, congratulatory, or condolence in nature introduced during today's session be automatically adopted, and that all senators be co-sponsors, and that the legal counsel and the clerk's office be authorized to make the technical amendments.
On the motion without any objection, so ordered.
Madam Speaker, I move that as we get to the second reading file, that notwithstanding the House rules, that if in the event we get to a bill and either the bill is pending a committee report to be filed, or if the author for some reason still needs more time, I move then that that bill be not passed on file, but just be set aside, but it does not lose its place in the order as outlined in the second reading file.
On that motion without any objections, so ordered.
Madam Speaker, can I ask if there are any legislative concurrences submitted to the clerk? Okay, we'll address those later. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I guess then we're down to second reading file.
Senator Tenorio, you recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'd like to make a motion to excuse a couple of our colleagues, Senator Lujan, who's off island, and Speaker Forbes.
Yes. On the motion without any objections, so ordered. We're in second reading, so I recognize Senator Shimizu on Bill 389.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and good morning. That was a wonderful wedding yesterday, Madam Speaker. Before I lay the foundation, I wanted to say that to you. Madam Speaker, Bill 389.
I want to make a motion to accept the substituted version.
Okay. I move that we accept substitute version 389 for purposes of voting today.
So on the motion to accept substitute bill without objection, so ordered. Is the motion now to place the substitute bill? A motion to place.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this is one of those rare. Can I speak on my bill?
No, make a motion first to place a bill, a substituted version on the third reading.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought I did that. Okay, to move it to third reading for purposes of voting today.
Thank you. And you want to discuss?
Yeah, just it's a very brief statement that I want to. This is an act to waive the subdivision and the zoning setback requirements for lot number 251. That's in the municipality of Inalahan. Madam Speaker, this is a small homeowner, a father and a mother, who wanted to subdivide the remaining portion of lot 151 so that he can give it to his 3 children for purposes of them building their homes close to. What it does here, it just, the substitute version incorporated all of the recommendations from Department of Land Management to make this possible. The land, what it does, it allows the family to be able to have an access road to be able to go back to the property. And once that access road is there, they would be able, the kids, they can subdivide it and they can go to the banks and borrow money to be able to build the lot. This is a small family that's trying to be able to give the inheritance to the 3 kids. It is notable that in this property, it's over in the road in Salamilagro, the Road of Miracles in Lahan, there is it has a sewer system. So that's a positive part of this property, so that when they build the 3 new homes in the back of the parents' home, there will be no problems with sewer hookup. So I ask my colleagues to please support Bill 389 as substituted, so that this father and mother can be able to give the property, subdivide the properties for the 3 children. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Shimizu. So on the motion then are you making an amendment? I'm sorry? No, you're, okay. So on the motion then to place on 3rd reading without any objections, so ordered. With bill number 385, Senator Blas, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I move to place Bill 385 in the 3rd reading, and I'd like to be able to discuss it for a little bit.
A motion to place. Okay, and you want to discuss?
Yes, ma'am.
Please continue.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, very simply and very quickly, this bill basically provides an appropriation to the Office of the Attorney General from the monies that were found located in the Highway Fund for the purposes of initiating legal action and to looking in towards initiating legal action against the federal government, the United States government, for the purposes of attempting or starting to recover the amounts owed to this government, to the people of Guam, for the services that the people of Guam, the government of Guam, have been providing in behalf of the federal government to those citizens from the freely associated states through the Compact of Free Association Act that the United States had entered into with the freely associated states. Since 1986, Madam Speaker, the government of Guam has spent in excess of $40 million a year providing these services to these individuals. These are services that were promised by the federal government to these citizens, and rightfully so. These citizens deserve and should accept and expect to be able to receive these services. And the issue is not that they're receiving, that they're of their expectation to receive their services. The issue here is the amounts that the federal government owes to the people of Guam, because the burden has been placed on the government, on the people of Guam, to provide these services. And as a result of this, over the last 20 some odd years, the federal government, in calculations provided in 2 different reports submitted by the executive branch. First one was in 2004, enumerating or detailing the expenditures of this government from 1986 to 2003. And the second one was provided earlier this year, in January of this year, for expenditures that we had in providing these services from fiscal years 2004 to 2007, that this amount exceeds over $400 million. You know, Madam Speaker, over the last few weeks, this body has been deliberating, debating, discussing, and basically trying to squeeze money, a nickel out of 2 pennies, in being able to find money, much needed funding for the different services, for the different things that the people of Guam expect, deserve, desire, need. Not what we want, what we need to have. And in all of the discussions, one is there is that lack of funding, there's that lack of money. It's very ironic too that a lot of the discussions that we've been having over the last few weeks was because of mandates that have been imposed upon us, or mandates that the federal government has stated that we have ignored, that we have set aside, or that we have violated. And the irony in this whole thing is, if you look at the Compacts of Free Association, if you look at the federal public law that established the Compacts of Free Association, most specifically, Federal Law, Public Law 99-239 and 99-658, in Section 104E of both mandates, of both acts, it provides that Congress, the United States, will provide recompense. They acknowledged back in 1986 and in 1994 when they enacted these 2 acts, that there's going to be some issue, there's going to be some financial impact that these things are going to have on areas such as ours. And that it is the intent of Congress to reimburse these areas that have been affected for providing those services to the citizens of the freely associated states. I must say, Madam Speaker, this is not a lawsuit, or this is not an initiative that will go against, that will go after those citizens from the freely associated states. They are just, when they come to Guam, they're looking for those opportunities that the federal government promised to them. So this is not going against them. This is going after the monies that the federal government owes us for providing those services. Again, going back to the conversations we've had over the last few weeks. One conversation, you know, that what we need to do with regards to the landfill issue is going to cost us at least $202 million. There's the discussion that a good senator from PD had stated that once that is paid off, actually it's not going to be $202 million, it's going to be in excess of $600 million. We have an issue with regards to the schools, JFK, that needs to be rebuilt. Where are you going to get the money for that? In the newspaper, you read almost on a daily basis on the front page, the newspaper, the PDN, publishes the status of the rooms available at the Guam Memorial Hospital for our people. I don't know what today's status is, but on many occasions, it's been code red. Code red basically meaning there's no more room at the inn. And when this body sits down and tries to find where to be able to collect, to be able to get that money, the funding, the necessary finances, so that we can pay for these things, one of the things that we always got to look at is that, again, every year we spend at a minimum $40 million. You know, it's interesting, Madam Speaker, in a report or in a application for federal assistance that the Guam Public School System provided over the summer, they estimated that there are over 5,000 students who come from the freely associated states that are in the Guam Public School System. They also estimated that it costs roughly on average about $6,200 or $6,500, I'm not too sure, to be able to provide the basic educational needs for the students within the Guam Public School System. Take $6,200, multiply that by 5,000, that comes up to over $30 million. 30 million on an annual basis. The Guam Public School System alone spends $30 million. What do we get in return from the federal government for providing services, their services? At best, $14.2 million annually. That doesn't even cover half of what the Guam Public School System provides. We can get into a whole other discussion with regards to the kind of the services that public health provides, and the kind of services that the Guam Memorial Hospital provides, and the services that the Guam Police Department and the Guam Fire Department provides. We can get into a discussion with regards to the displacement of some of our residents for federal programs that they could get into, but because these are programs that that citizens from the freely associated states have been made available to them and are taking advantage of that, the displacement of the local people, of the residents, of the U.S. citizens that are here from those programs, we're not even discussing that. We're not even discussing the amounts that we have to pay up annually, or we should be paying. Let me rephrase that. That we should be paying in earned income tax credits. The earned income tax credits that we are required now to be able to pay to these individuals. We can get into all those discussions. At the end of the day, ma'am, what you're going to find out is that the amounts of monies that the federal government provides to us in reimbursement for compact impact costs, $14.2 million, is nowhere near what we spend. When we were discussing the budgets earlier this year, one of the discussions that we had is, where are we going to get the money? How are we going to afford this? You know, Madam Speaker, I hope that we never come to a day where this body is going to have to consider whether or not we're going to be able to provide public health or GMH or Guam Police Department the additional monies that they're going to need, because, well, you know what, this is for services that you're going to provide to the FAS citizens. The federal government hasn't paid it, so therefore we're not going to give it to you. I hope we never get to that. So what this does, Madam Speaker, is this bill provides funding to the Office of the Attorney General, so they can start to study, they can start to look into the actions that we should be taking, that we need to take to be able to recoup the amounts owed to the people of Guam for compact impact reimbursements. And I want to thank the co-sponsor to this bill, Senator Cabo, for assisting me and helping me, not only because he believes, I know that he believes in this effort too as well, but helping me in being able to find the funding. And I also like to thank some of my colleagues who I've had offline discussions on the bill and their support that they're going to provide to this bill. I would like then to ask this body to consider, please consider, the approval of this bill, so that we can finally go after the money that the federal government owes to the people of Guam, so that we can deal with a number of these issues that right now we're placing the burdens of these costs on our future, on our children. Can't do that anymore. You're never going to see me, Madam Speaker, raise my hand to ask the people of Guam to mortgage their lives for the next 30 years for mandates by the federal government, knowing full well the federal government owes us this money. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Point of
Senator
order,
Esposito.
Madam Speaker.
Okay, please state your point of order.
Madam Speaker, I rise to a point of order that this is an appropriation measure, and pursuant to the standing rules, we're required to be in the committee of the whole. So can I take a 1-minute recess?
Okay, we will take 1 minute recess.
So it might be covered. But he agrees to move it aside, suspend discussion, and go on to the next bill. They're okay with that. And then we have to do the three or four bill.
The legislature is back in session. Senator Respicio, you recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, notwithstanding the House rules, I move to suspend the discussion on Bill 385 and to go to the next bill on the agenda, which is 253.
On that motion, without any objection, so ordered. Okay, so we are now then on Bill 253. Senator Tenorio, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I move to place Bill number 253 EC in third reading and with brief comments.
Okay, on the motion to place, and you're going to discuss?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, please proceed.
Madam Speaker, every year, information on Guam is lost inappropriately about telephone records, information which can be used for a variety of things, including identity theft and the inappropriate or unwanted calls that are made to individuals' homes, the possible exposure of those homes, and of course businesses as well, to criminal activity. And the FCC has seen fit to adopt similar provisions which put high penalties on the release of information, telephone records specifically. There is provisions in this bill that call for basically fines and criminal penalties for the release of information. The Attorney General's office, the legal counsel for the Guam Police Department has testified in support of this bill, as did telecommunication company representatives, and we'd like to make sure that our island, as much as possible, can be in sync with our federal counterparts with regards to release of information. This bill would in fact restrict the use of telephone records without consent, and then fraudulent means that are used to obtain those records and the criminal activity that ensues as a result of that release of information can then be penalized. So I ask my colleagues to please support this bill. It is as timely as the information technology has continued to grow over the last few years, and it's important for us to make sure that we institute proper provisions for criminalizing activity which has been heretofore not criminal. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
On the motion, are there any speakers? So on the motion then to place on third reading file without any objections, so ordered. We're now in Bill 256. Senator Tenorio, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I move to place Bill number 256EC as introduced on the third reading with brief comments.
And on the motion into place, you would like to speak on it?
Yes, ma'am.
Please.
Madam Speaker,
continue.
this is a very proactive bill with regards to skimming. Skimming is the process of obtaining information specific to debit cards, credit cards, and the very highly guarded information that we all put in our wallets and our purses every single day. There is a very highly sophisticated process by which a pinhole camera and electronic devices can be used to obtain the information on the magnetic strip on a credit card and a debit card. This information, as you know, exposes you, if it were to fall into the wrong hands, to an insurmountable amount of theft. And this process, the process by which the information is garnered is defined in this bill. The electronic means and, of course, the banking and the payment services throughout our globe is tied as closely as possible to the protection of that information. This bill would, in fact, make criminal those activities which gain information without the express authorization of the holder of that card and the person who should be authorized to obtain that information. Skimming information through electronic and through photographic means is tantamount to identity theft, and very much so it's a pattern of fraud. And this has been exposed in many places across our globe, and especially in the United States, where the use of credit cards is a daily occurrence. So I ask my colleagues to look at this bill and to support this bill in order to make sure that we're protecting our residents and our businesses from unwanted theft. Jesus Masi.
On the motion, are there anyone who would like to speak? There being none, so then the motion to place in third reading file without any objections, so ordered. We have received Bill 379, which is number 5. So as they come in, we go back to them, so we will continue then. So 379. Senator Shimizu, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Speaker, I move that Bill 379 be moved to third reading file for purposes of voting today, and I'd like to speak on it.
Please proceed.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, I'd like to thank my co-sponsor, Senator Calvo, and yourself and Tina Munoz Barnes for co-sponsoring this act. Bill 379 is an act to amend the exemption and limitation on the gross income contained in the Dave Santos Act as amended, in Public Law 2902 from 50,000 to 200,000. Madam Speaker, during the early days of the 29th Guam Legislature, I made efforts to get this bill passed through a floor amendment, and basically it's a bill that sets up public policy whereby we want to encourage and enhance small businesses on Guam. And the Dave Santos Act has been amended a number of times that have reduced the amount of the exemption from taxes, and also reduced the amount in terms of the total amount of what defines a small business. At one time it was 500,000, half a million, and now it's down to 200,000. And now we're bringing it back up a little bit to help our small businesses. We had a meeting, and you yourself attended, with the Cedars organization at the University of Guam, who invited us to talk to the daycare owners. And one of the things that came about was the daycare owners were looking to the legislature as to how they can assist small business such as theirs to be able to continue to operate. In this day and age of inflation and escalating costs, that industry is being, impacted. And one of the things that, as I listened to them, it brought to mind the efforts that I had earlier to resurrect and increase the exemption of the Dave Santos that would just do just that, take care of small businesses. Small businesses are having it very, very hard, and any way that the government can be friendly towards small businesses, not the multinational, not the large corporations, it would, in fact, truly reflect that we do care of the cornerstone of any economy. If the small businesses are closing as a result of the conditions of the economy now, and we don't step in, what's going to happen is that they're going to start reducing their staff. They're going to have to start laying off people. They're going to have to stop providing services. And if you really look, like in the case in point of the child care, they really do save the government money, because those kids that are in child care or kindergarten age or the early years of childhood development will eventually move towards the government coffers. So, Madam Chair, I ask my colleagues to support this effort. In fact, if we can do more to be friendlier to small businesses, to help them to continue to be in business and continue to be able to contribute to the general fund because they continue to operate, I would greatly appreciate this. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome, Vice Speaker. Senator Calvo on the motion.
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I rise in support of Bill 379 as sponsored by our Vice Speaker. It's an honor to be a co-sponsor with other senators, Senator Speaker, and also the Legislative Speaker as co-sponsors of this legislation. Madam Speaker, this exemption, and again, discussing with some of the senators that were actually friends with the original Mr. Dave Santos, who again this bill is named after, And what the intent of this legislation was, again, was to try to assist, really not assist, but trying to foster small business through lifting some of the hurdles in regards to government taxation for small businesses in the island of Guam. This particular piece of legislation really goes back to what the heart and the intent of the Dave Santos Act was. And, Madam Speaker, in the discussions in the public hearing in regards to the possible impacts, there was some discussion whether there's an impact of anywhere from $1.5 million to maybe even $3 million in the bottom line of revenues coming into the government of Guam. But then, further in discussion, there was a realization that when you look at what businesses we are talking about, again, these small businesses that call Guam their home, this is their home. These revenues that are collected by these small businesses do not leave the island. These companies are not part of a holding company that is based in Tokyo or San Francisco or Honolulu. These businesses are homegrown. And with these exemptions, there sometimes, and I guess it comes from those folks that deal with the accounting and using almost of an abacus in where, okay, if we are receiving so-and-so amount of dollars now as a result of this constituent or this business paying a certain tax, if we take it out, then we're going to lose it. The effect of that is not the impact. The actual fact of the matter is, if a small business or an entrepreneur that is taking in what is considered a small business dollar figure in terms of revenues on an annual basis, if they are to be freed up from paying $1,000 in any given year to the government in the form of gross receipts taxes, that $1,000 is going to stay in Guam. It's either going to be used to pay another bill or buy another product or help to assist in the paying of personnel that this person may have. And those dollars then will circulate within the economy. And again, it is our belief and the belief of the author of the bill as well as myself, that with this recirculation there will be a multiplication factor as well that ultimately will come back to the government in Guam in other forms. We're not talking a great deal of dollars when you even look at the calculation here. But again, even with that, with that amount of dollars that will be staying with these small businesses, we believe that it will further impetus for these small businesses to either save, which would help a bank, or spend, and with that also continue to help and assist in growing this economy. So with that, Madam Speaker, I rise in support of Bill 379. I'm asking for my colleagues for their support as well. Thank you very much.
On the motion, I recognize Speaker Van Pangilinan.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I certainly rise in support, not for the first time, not for the second time, not for the third time, like my good colleague, the Vice Speaker, but since the beginning. And it certainly is very, very nice to hear some of my colleagues who in the beginning and at the second time and at the third time oppose this measure. And the only difference, I guess, is maybe it's Christmas. But it really kind of baffles me, and that all the rationale that we presented in placing this argument before this body, the good Vice Speaker articulated them well, just the same as the good Vice Speaker articulated the need for injecting money into the Department of Revenue and Taxation. And everybody fought us along the way. And I say us because I was right behind him supporting him. And every time we had a vote on an override, members of this body get up and argue against it. Now that the AG's or the IG's report has come out, it's like, what happened? Hey, Dan, lay. Yet, when the rubber meets the road, these guys had a flat tire, just went nowhere. But now, I accept their repentance. I accept it. And I welcome it, and I embrace their position now on this issue. Because I know my colleagues, when it comes to taking a look at business and what it takes to make money, they understand fully, perfectly the term, it takes money to make money. It takes money for businesses to expand. It takes money for businesses to stay in business. And what this does, and I'm not ashamed to say it, what this does is it puts a little bit more money back into the pockets of small business so they can use that money to make more money and pay more taxes. It comes back. It's a circle, and we're not asking for more than what would normally come. We're just asking to let them use that money a little bit longer so that they can grow their businesses, and they will return it in the form of more taxes paid. Maybe a new employee that they're able to bring on as their business expands. Maybe a new machine that they're able to buy or purchase on time or on credit, because now they've got better cash flow when you look at their balance sheet and when you look at their cash flow statements, and the banks can feel a little bit more comfortable that the cash flow is going to be able to support the new loan for that new machine, which makes them more efficient, which gives them greater capability, which gives them the ability to generate more business. And I somebody talked to me earlier about an epiphany, and I know this is not an epiphany because they fully believed in helping business. This just happens to be small business. Maybe they didn't want to help small business, that it was just too small to deal with. But I want to congratulate and of course give appropriate and proper credit to the tenacity. People say I have some tenacity. I say the good vice speaker, when it comes to the Department of Revenue and Tax, since January of 2007, has been tenacious with regards to trying to place the resources at the Department of Revenue and Taxation to give them more resources to just ensure that people comply. Not to go after somebody who is struggling to pay his taxes, but for somebody who is creative in finding ways to avoid paying taxes. And for the daycare centers, this really has focused a lot on the daycare centers as a prime example of how this helps that type of industry. But it extends to so much more, When we take a look at the definition of small business as it relates to the economy of Guam, it's like 90% of Guam businesses, maybe 99% of Guam businesses are small business. I remember when I moved working in my career here to get additional experience, and when California Corporation I was working for said, if you want to advance your career, you got to come back to California and work in that environment, because we want to see how you react. And coming from Guam, that company was a large company here on Guam. And I moved to California, and I was in a graduate course at UC Irvine, and people were asking where people worked and so forth. And one of the questions they asked, and I'd just been in California for a short period of time, and we were going through this executive management development program, and part of that was taking some graduate courses. And I was at a graduate finance course in UC Irvine, and the professor said, how many of you here work for large corporations? And hey, I raised my hand. After all, I come from Guam, where we were a large corporation. I came to California, and there were 5, 10 times more people than those who worked on Guam. So I gladly raised my hand, and my colleague, who I was going through the executive development program, who had his career in California and Utah, says, "Put your hand down." And I said, "Why? I work for a large corporation." And he goes, "No, you don't. There's only 4,000 in the company." And I go, "Huh?" That's the scale we're dealing with, you know. So 4,000 in California is not a large corporation, at least by their definition, or by, you know, the definition of corporations and the global reach of these corporations, you know. But I thought, man, I'm big time here. And, you know, and so when we look at Guam and we think this business is big or that business is big, the majority of the support comes from businesses employing between 5 and 35 people here on Guam, you know. And that's who's meant to help. Yeah, again, I go back and I thank my colleagues who have seen the light, who now support this, and look forward to their continued support of small business on Guam and their continued engagement in trying to find other ways. You know, the big corporations on Guam, as we call them, you know, have the qualifying certificate, have depreciation expense on large pieces of equipment, are able to buy equipment with the accelerated depreciation of major capital equipment, are able to write that off, and the government funds that. We fund that with the depreciation allowance and so forth. We fund that through the cash flow because, as we all know, depreciation is a non-cash expense, but it's a deduction on your income. And so we fund that. On the small business, they don't have that kind of flexibility in working through their books. And it is this kind of flexibility that allows them to take advantage of the cash flow that this provides. And it's not huge, but it's a help, and it allows them to continue to be a growing concern, so that one day they will eclipse this threshold and pay, you know, full taxes on their dollar, just like, you know, our QC recipients that we hope and we wish and we legislate that they pay their full share of taxes at the end of their qualifying certificate. But I tell you, it doesn't work that way because of the muscle they have. And that as soon as it's coming up to the end of the QC term, you either put in another improvement and ask for an extension, or you restructure the corporation, or you sell out, and the new guy comes and says, you know, I need a QC. And I haven't seen one turned down yet. But we turned down small business in this body in the repeal of those legislation. We didn't repeal all of it. We adjusted it because of the tough economic times, but we kept a provision in there to assist small business, and it was wiped out later on. And now we're restoring it. You know, we're going to monitor it. It's going to provide a decrease initially to the cash flow of this government with regards to the gross receipts tax, but it's not going to be detrimental. And I think it will be advantageous to this government to provide assistance through this kind of program to small businesses, so that once again, and I'll conclude with this, they can continue to be a going and a growing concern and contribute to the economic sustainability of Guam's economy. Thank you very much, and Sidus Masi, and congratulations, Mr. Vice Speaker.
Thank you very much, Speaker Pangilinan. Are there any speakers on the motion to place Bill 379 in third reading? Okay, there being none, no objections, so it's ordered. Bill number 357, Senator Tenorio, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
257, I'm sorry, 257.
About to say there's a Magnum. Just a second. I want to see if there's a substitute.
Yes, there's a
Yeah,
substitute version.
all right. Give me 1 second, Madam Speaker.
It's further back.
Oh, there. Madam Speaker, I move to place, oh, I'm sorry, move to accept Bill number 257EC as substitute by the Committee on Public Safety, Criminal Justice, and Youth.
On the motion, without any objections, so ordered.
Madam Speaker, I move to place Bill number 257EC as substituted in the third reading. I'd like to speak on the bill.
Yes, please proceed.
Madam Speaker, thank you very much. Madam Speaker, this bill proposes to hold the government of Guam to the same standards we place everyone else, to have liability insurance on government vehicles. Government vehicle liability insurance would save this government and a substantial portion of our population who have to deal with issues with regards to government vehicles in a much, much more advantageous position, and this is why. The vehicles of the government of Guam, in order to insure them for simple liability insurance, cost around $200. You'll see in the listing provided by Bureau of Budget, the number of vehicles that are registered, the number of vehicles per department instrumentality of the government of Guam, and the approximate cost to have that average liability insurance. Now, I'd like to go over a couple of these numbers just to be clear about some of the figures. First of all, a number of these vehicles I think are exaggerated. And the reason I say that is this. The mayor's office, I understand, is listed here. They've got on an average of 12 vehicles per mayor's office. I don't think that's accurate. If you go to under department number, for example, number 1000, Department of Public Works, the buses in that 475 should already be insured. If you go further down in the Guam Police Department, department number 1200, the immunity exists with regards to emergency vehicles, and the same can be said. They're simply uninsurable because the nature of the nature of the work that they do in law enforcement makes them, we can't obtain insurance for them. So there's a number of vehicles that are already exempt in this area. The ADA requirements with regards to GPSS, there's already a number of vehicles in special education which should already be insured. The law enforcement under Department of Parks and Recreation, under Department 2500, are also exempt for the same reason as the Guam Police and the Guam Fire Departments. The Guam Guam International Airport Authority should already be insured by virtue of the covenants which exist for their agency because they are autonomous. And then you have a number of vehicles under Department Listing 8400 toward the bottom, which has 123, where a substantial number, I think, of those vehicles are private contractors, but they are leased, and they are already insured under their owner. We were looking at the figures that were laid out here, $475,000, which we think are a gross exaggeration. I think that the actual amount of money would probably range somewhere between $60,000 and $200,000 for the actual cost of the insurance. Now, they want to give you some numbers for perspective. In a single event, in a liability matter, you could have easily $60,000 that's payable to a claimant in a liability case. You have, of course, injuries and property damage, which is covered. And that's under the existing statute that we have in Guam. It's $200,000, even if we were to go to, the top rung of what our estimates are, you're looking at 2 or 3 different claims. There have been years, Madam Speaker, where cases have not been resolved because the government claims fund is severely underfunded. It has been every single year that we've been in the legislature, or at least that I've been here. So we are looking at about, a substantial underfunding of a government claims fund, and we also have the ability to fund on pennies on the dollar of the actual cost it would take to reimburse individuals who are injured or their properties need to be replaced as a result of damage, which results from an accident, of course, at the fault of the government in those cases where there's a determination that, in fact, the government is responsible for those damages. So this bill, Madam Speaker, will cost money. There is no doubt about that. The amount of money that it's going to cost, I think, are nominal compared to the actual damages which our government causes. And we know that, the number of vehicles that are out there on the streets, it's a statistical certainty that there's going to be accidents, that there are going to be injuries. We need to hold the government responsible, as we do every other citizen in our community, to make sure that we have liability insurance, so we're not basically putting people off for months and months and months, if not years on end, to be able to recover from the damages and injuries that result from the fault of government employees who are driving vehicles which are not currently insured. So I ask my colleagues to please consider this bill and support the bill, because we need to make sure that when we do have accidents, when there is a liability on the part of our government, that our government is going to be able to pay for it. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Senator Tenor, Senator Pangilinan, and then Senator Guthertz.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I think this is a solution looking for a problem. And the reason why I say that is because first we have to define what's the problem that's going to be resolved in this. And we heard, of course, that there's years and years and years of unsettled claims, but where is it? Number one, there's no testimony at all from anybody. There's no testimony from DOA with regards to the status of the claims fund. There's no testimony on the AG on the number of vehicular accidents that have been filed with where claims are filed against the government. Where's the substantiation that this is a problem that needs a solution? There was at one time, Madam Speaker, a large number of backdated claims as a result of vehicular accidents. And I saw that problem back then, and true, even up until that time, we were appropriating close to $1 million for the government claims fund. But that was for everything. Contractual disputes, every single claim that is filed against the government gets paid out of the government claims fund. And what you did actually have happen is that people who get injured or their cars get damaged by other government vehicles of government employees during official hours ended up waiting because we didn't replenish the government claims fund. But we restructured the government claims fund a few years ago, and that we now only have tort as being the eligible claim to be paid out of the government claims fund, and that we prioritize the payment of vehicular accidents by the Attorney General's office under the Government Claims Act. Before, it used to be that the claim goes to the government and the AG contests every single claim, or else they just sit on it. And so somebody waits 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, a year to get their claim settled, and the AG just doesn't respond. It's not a priority because they've got a multi-million-dollar lawsuit or a multi-thousand-dollar lawsuit that's going to be claimed against the government claims fund. They want to protect that. So people sat around and waited. You know, if this is a problem, then where's the statistics to prove that people are waiting years and years and years for the claims on vehicular accidents? I would like to see that before I decide that the solution is to buy liability insurance for the government claims fund, or is the solution appropriate more money to the government claims fund, segregate it for vehicle accidents, and we self-insure as we always have. Take a look at where the risk factors are and so forth, but let's base it on statistical data. It's not here. It's not presented here. I'm not saying it's not there, but I'm saying it certainly isn't presented here. And the last time I looked at the government claims fund, for example, from last year, they had a carry-forward balance. Now, why did they have a carry-forward balance? Is it because there's no claims against the government claims fund, or the claims aren't settled? So let's get the AG in here and ask them, hey, are you settling these automobile insurance claims? Because that's all this addresses, automobile accidents. You know, is there a problem? Is there enough money? Is the solution liability insurance, or is the solution greater appropriation? How much have you paid? How many claims? What's the average? Compare it against the premium. Compare it against future increases in the premium. That's how I think this problem should be approached. And we did that back then when you know, because I was the one who introduced on restructuring the government claims fund and prioritizing vehicle claims. Now if you file a claim and the AG doesn't contest it in a certain amount of time, automatically gets paid. Automatically they waive, you know, their right to contest it if a certain time frame expires, and DOA, gets shot over to DOA, and DOA cuts the check for it. That's how we've been able to accelerate, you know, these claims and getting them paid and people not having to wait months and years. Is that system not working? That's why we need this? I don't know. I haven't heard that it's not working. The people who work with this haven't said anything. So, you know, I like the idea of examining ways in which we can ensure that we make our public whole when damage and harm is inflicted upon them by an action of a government employee in a vehicular accident. But I also need to know that that is the state of things as they are, rather than the state of things that we wish they are, so that we can pass this bill to solve a solution that doesn't exist, for a problem that doesn't exist, or at least has not been proven to me that it exists. So absent all of that, absent that kind of thinking, absent that kind of analysis, absent that kind of statistical data, you know, rather than just grabbing anecdotal evidence, because this is something that doesn't need to rely on anecdotal evidence to support its passage or not. This is something that is tailor-made for some good, clear work, hard work, good work, statistical work, good research to substantiate that the problem exists and the current system doesn't work. But there's none of it at all. No testimony, no statistics, except for how much it would cost this government in premiums on a yearly basis. And, you know, and if that's all I'm going to make my decision on, then I don't have enough information to make a decision in the affirmative on this bill. So I would like to see that kind of information presented to this body so that we can make an educated, informed, and what I would hope to be, you know, a decision that will support making a change if it's needed in order to ensure that our general public and our people are made whole when they are injured by actions of government officials and government employees in the operation of a government vehicle. So that's what I have to say on this, Madam Speaker, and you know, I just hope that before we decide to vote on this, that information comes to us so we can make these decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker Ben. Senator Guthertz, you are recognized on the motion.
Madam Speaker, my concern with the bill is that it changes really the potential of sovereign immunity for the government. And it places the government of Guam in a situation where it becomes directly liable for any potential claim against it through commercial insurance claims. And I'm very worried about this because, like Senator Pangilinan, I would like to hear from the Attorney General, because it is her office that is responsible for receiving claims and reviewing them and acting on them. And I'd also like to hear from other entities that would have an interest in this. I'm sure the private insurance companies would love this. But I'm very concerned about the legal questions this may raise for the government of Guam. And I think some more research is needed here and some more documentation as to what the impact would actually be. Some of us in this room have worked with line departments, and of course we've always had problems getting insurance for the government of Guam. Unless you're an autonomous agency with a very large budget, you don't really have the monies to go out and get your vehicle fleet insured or other assets insured that fall under your purview. However, we've always had an approach to deal with this, and that is the self-insurance approach. If the problem is there's a lack of money in the claims fund to meet the demands, then I think it's incumbent upon this legislature to address that issue. But removing sovereign immunity from the government and exposing us to commercial claims, can you imagine what the cost of this insurance would be for the government of Guam? And how are we going to pay for that in this climate? So those are my concerns. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Senator Guthertz. Senator Palacios, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, well, I do not necessarily disagree, of course, that government vehicles should carry liability insurance for the protection of perhaps the other party. But to pay $475,000 a year on premium, I wonder really how much on an annual basis this government is paying out for claims against it. And if that is a smaller amount, then perhaps we should maintain status quo and maintain self-insurance. This is a very substantial amount of money that without a very clear comparative figures, such as pointed out by previous speakers, I'm not prepared to support this at this point. I venture to say that perhaps what it's costing this government now under the self-insured policy is that it probably is a smaller amount being paid on an annual basis, and therefore we would actually have been saving money by the current status rather the status quo. So I need more figures, especially the history of cost this government pay out for claims against it. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much, Senator Palacios. Are there any other speakers on the motion? Then I would recognize the mover of the motion to close, Senator Tenorio.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I want to thank all of my colleagues for their criticism of the bill and their insightfulness. Their concerns are similar to mine, in that we've been trying to exact this information, statistically speaking, from a variety of different sources. And, you know, I could sit here and say, you know, well, Madam Speaker, let the bill fail or pass on its merit, because we have to hold our citizens to the same standards of this government and vice versa, that this government should have its own liability insurance, just like we require every other citizen on our community, because that's the way it should be. We should make sure that we don't hold other individuals within our community to standards that the government's not willing to do itself. In many cases, there may be exceptions. Maybe this is one of them. Maybe we're not spending enough money. Maybe we don't have enough facts to be able to move on this bill. And so, you know, I'm not naive enough to believe that this bill will not be passed or fail based on the concerns of my colleagues. And so, you know what? I'm going to be forthright about it. I'm going to go ahead and ask to withdraw my motion to move it to third reading and move it to the inactive file. And therefore, in the next legislative process, hopefully I'll be able to exact some of these figures and the statistics that people are looking for, because I too want to make sure that we're not going to be spending money unnecessarily. But I also don't want to see individuals who I am told hold off for months and sometimes years to get claims settled with the government of Guam, because we in fact do appropriate less monies for our claims fund than we should. So I'm going to go ahead and withdraw the motion to place it in a third reading, and in fact make a motion to place it in the inactive file, and I'll reintroduce the bill and make sure we get those facts before we move it in the next term, so that we know exactly what the amounts are, because I want the satisfaction of all my members here to be intact before they vote on a measure, that they know what the real statistics are. And sometimes, honestly, Madam Speaker, I'm just as frustrated as they are, because sometimes getting information is not as easy as we'd like. So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak on the bill, and we'll be doing it again in the next term. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Tenorio. On the motion, without any objections, so ordered. Bill number 314, Senator Espaldon.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I move to accept Bill number 314 EC as amended, as substitute by the Committee on Judiciary, Natural Resources, Infrastructure, and Cultural Affairs.
On the motion to accept, no objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I move to place Bill number 314 EC in the third reading file, and I wish to speak a little bit on it.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, very simply put, this Bill 314 basically would establish a policy that any artifacts or remains, ancestral remains, become the property of the government. In essence, right now what we have is the private property owners, upon a finding of any artifacts, relics, or historical remains, the current landowners have the first rights to any fines on their private property. This bill would essentially establish a policy that those remains, those historical artifacts and whatnot, will belong to the government of Guam. And again, that's for the purpose to be able to study it, to be able to preserve it, and be able to display it, and to be able to put forth our cultural heritage in perspective and keep it within the people of Guam. Right now, we have, moving forward with the military buildup, we're going to see a lot of development. We're going to see a lot of excavations, and I am sure that we're going to find a lot of artifacts and a lot of remains that, again, should belong, I think, in terms of what the policy should belong to the people of this island, so that we can preserve it and display it according to the way we as a people want it to be preserved and displayed. And very, very simply put, I'm asking for the support of my colleagues on this bill to establish this policy. Thank you.
On the motion, anyone who would like to discuss it, Speaker Ben, you're recognized.
Nanga, Madam Speaker, sa no sta pro hukukisakan sa megaya palabraso.
Okay.
You know, Madam Speaker, rarely do I get up, but I told Senator Espaldon, I think he and I were the only two individuals at the hearing. There might have been somebody else, but the bill as originally introduced, I liked very much. The bill as amended, I love, you know. And I keep telling him, Jim, where's that bill? I love that bill. You know, sa Hafa, sa Uguayza, I historiota. Uguayza, I pinelu ni tautomo na, ni manmofo na gwinigitano, gwinigitano, chamoru tanu guahan. Ja, at man tempo, guana, an gua manyoda, pinelu ni tautauta ni manmofo na, gwinigi hiluesti itanota, kulanling niya na izonia, ti izota. Istigi nalay, lengnya na izota. Ja taza, gai izu eji ipinelu ni tautomo na, gwinigitano, na itauto itano gai izu. Jata protehi, jata na siguro na ningayan na tafan masakengwan, ningayan na tafan matsulegwan, taigwi ni man matsuli, isineda, siya archaeologist ni man matumagi para tafan mastudia, tay manu linalota gini ni antes na antigo na tempo. Daan ni masoda siya ipinelunia, Fera di ma istodba, matsuli, zaman na suwa, zaman na hono para itano san lago. Dan kagaya siya gui. Tihita hasti humahaso na tauto. Megay na gobyerno siya ni independenti na gobyerno ni siya mumaneneyay nilala niya, i-gobyerno niya, igunahan niya, hagasa mapasa na izun niya, izun itano, izun itauto. Jamegay paugo na unli na nuevo na gobernamento siya ni Gininistaba na man makolonisa lokwi. Ja ani tempun man makolonisa. Man holumi. Man kakalanize. Ja matsuli iguinahan ni tau-tau tono. Ja ma gaigi gwa gaigi Harvard, gwa gaigi Princeton, gwa gaigi no Smithsonian, gwa gaigi sa London, na gaigi sagan umega ni esti historia siya. Ja esti pagui nuevo na gobyerno ni man matsulegwan nedzo. Gaigi pagu za man nuevo na manyua gi papa i padzo ni man colonize ya ni pagu na man independenti mas pipia pagu tay manu empenyo za manohano para kotti ti kotti ni tanu niya bad kotti ni tanu ani manggaigi ikosas niya zaman masusu pero matsuli tati igunahan niya hafagwi Harvard na poalok i-zon niya i-artifacts i-aborigines kinintay mano hodino muna isyano autoridad pero mastodba o matsuli o mastudia pes munga siya muna lalo sa tilalagta na tsamos tutudya jaw na judam taymano bintingo hafa guahas ang taymano inilalayan tigo man malago hit lokwi patatungo no so may lafan holum sa fan man studia lo sa mo aday no na alum na pudi hago no umilaw sa hago umistudia na idzomu sa ponsulehan no polo itiningo mo sa John natungo ham John tsuli itiningo mo lo pegay ko sa mommy za dainon nasua sa ti idzom mo idzo ni tau-tau itano istigi dong kulusti na tinulay ka gilay idzigi na leku ugwayjas tinabio sa ugwayja tau-tau ta ugwayja historiota ugwayja pinelunia za tori tempo jahu ningayan no mafuna sa no nagwinayza jajaw na bio no ilokwi dongkulo na agradecimiento si Senyor Espodon ni Estina bio ja masyabe mina 4 gini lo jahu na significanya sti na bio mana nangga sa gua gumayza sti agu jamwa gua ugwayza dongkulo no na diferensya pegazo gisampapa pa sabi ang class ti jani ngayan no ma tulay ka idzigi malago si Diyos masi dongkulo esti na advansa para proteksyon ni tau-tau ta igunahata itanota jani kosasta kosas chamoro kwinigi tano guahan si Diyos masi, Madam Speaker. Daw gagagaw todo sti mangatsongo gani alum po maraspot talokwi esti nabio. Ja pwede tahungog boss mizo ni taimano ginay dyan mizo nesti. Si Diyos masi.
Si Diyos masi, Speaker Ben. Hadi talo malago po kwantis. On the motion taza, pes si main mover, Senyor Espodan.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'm often asked whether I can speak tomorrow, and my reply is actually quite simple. I know enough to get me into trouble, but not enough to get me out of it. So, but with all the passion and inflection that the previous speaker, Senator Pangilinan, had put into it, and of course his opening statement and his support for it, I appreciate the words, and I'm sure that he articulated the sentiment that should belong to this bill and the policy that I hope we do enact into law in terms of having all the artifacts and all the relics and all the remains of our ancestors being the property of the people. I would like at this point in time, Madam Speaker, to make a motion to add another co-sponsor to this bill, and I move to add Senator Speaker Judy Wampat as a fourth co-sponsor, as a co-sponsor to this bill. And I would also like to add Senator Ray Tenorio to this as a sponsor of this bill as well.
On the motions then, for both, so no objections, so ordered.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. In closing, I just want to ask for the support. I feel very honored to be able to introduce this legislation. I think going forward with this military buildup and all the fines that we're going to have, that we will be a richer island because of the policy, this policy, if we do enact it into law. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're very welcome, Senator Espaldon. So on the motion then to place Bill 314 in the third reading without any objections, so ordered. Okay, there's Togi na yun sa nga.
Madam Speaker, daun bill movie that fan diskansa di that fan namot sa taluani that tabire tatigi alas 2.
Okay, on that motion, it will be on recess until 2 o'clock. I know there was a motion to put aside or put on hold until such time that we're able to get the language needed for Bill 383. So 385. So Senator, we left off with Senator Blas, who is the author of the bill, and I understand that we do have an amendment.
Yes, I do, Madam Speaker, but before I do that, I think I need to move, notwithstanding the House rules, move the requirement for the, to go to the, waive the requirement for the Committee of the Whole.
So
for this bill.
notwithstanding. No objections, and so ordered.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, one of the reasons why we had to suspend this is there was a request by the Imagalay for an amendment to for the process that we're going through, the $20 million loan that we would like to get to be able to satisfy a recent court mandate. And with that, ma'am, I'd like to be able to proffer that amendment in behalf of the Governor of Guam. And I think that all my colleagues should have the amendment because this was attached to a letter that was transmitted by the Governor to your office, ma'am. And it's page 2, and basically is an act to add subsection F to section 1512.2 of Title 5 of the Guam Code Annotated relative to authorization to enter into loan for the landfill costs. And all my colleagues should be able to have this, so move on this amendment, to place this amendment.
On the amendment, are there any discussions? There being no objections to the amendment, so ordered.
Thank you, ma'am.
Senator Blas, on your motion then to place Bill 385 on the third reading file.
There is Senator Cabo would like to be able to talk on this before we.
You would like to speak on the bill?
Yes, he would.
On the main motion then,
Yeah, he has to make up.
Senator Calvo, you're recognized.
You know, I just wanted to show the senator from Barrigada how truly I'm an ally of him, and I'm wishing to move forward in very profound pieces of legislation such as this. And Madam Speaker, this is a bill that in its inception, when we were discussing with Senator Blas, both the reasons for it as well as I want to make sure that the senator from Barrigada gets what he wants. And I think it's not only something that he wants, but something this body wants, as well as, I think, what is in the best interest of the people of Guam. And he was showing me some notes here on some of the statistics, especially in his oversight on health, as well as other areas in which, again, there has been a tremendous burden placed on this community and this government. I'm not too sure of which one of my colleagues were present at the public hearing in regards to this particular bill. And much of the discussions that went on were supportive of the bill and its intent. The problem was, of course, that there may have been a misperception by some of our citizens into, I guess, the rationale behind this bill. The last individual to testify, and again, he was just as passionate and emotional in his reasons for opposing the bill. In one of the particular reasons, and I can think my colleague can recall the author, was that there was a perception that this might be an attack against our neighbors and our brothers and sisters from the other islands, and in reality it was not. The island of Guam, our community, is a very open society, an open community, and inviting to all our brothers and sisters from other islands who are looking for better opportunities. And I think the main issue here, and what we try to make to explain to every one of those representatives from the federal government to come to Guam, we're not against the treaty, but we are steadfast in our belief that the United States government has an obligation to the community, our community Guam, as well as the differing governments in which they have signed this compact treaty, where their citizens can move freely to areas such as Guam and other territories and states. The fact of the matter is that there has been this mass movement, immigration into our territory, and these have become very productive citizens, not citizens, but representatives and neighbors in this community. They're neighbors in Momong Totomaiti, Tumuning, Jigo, all the way down to Malesu. There are neighbors, but we have to also deal with the facts. The facts have been is that our island has been in a very difficult financial position. Our economy has been contracting for many years, and with that, though there has been an increase in population, not only of our residents, but also increase in population of citizens of the FAS or members of the or citizens of the FAS moving to our territory, there has not been always a job opportunities that may be available, and it can be readily seen in some of the statistics that we've had to work for, not only in the Guam public school system, which the author has mentioned, but also in areas such as public health and our hospital. The MIP program, which is specific for those that are economically indigent, of that, 50% of the participants are again of FAS descent. The Medicaid program, about 13 to 14% of those recipients are also of the FAS descent. Now, Medicaid, it is closer in line to what the population demographics are of residents from the FAS, which is around 13 to 14%. But again, with MIP, it's running close to 50%. The cost that the author of the bill mentioned for education was close to $30 million annually. If you look at the cost for again, MIP, which is around $15 million, and then you just take half of that, which is a proportionate share that would be of FAS residents, you're looking at about $7 to $8 million. And then you add another $1.2 million, which is that share that comes out of Medicaid. So, Madam Speaker, this is not an attack against our very productive citizens of Guam and all the members of this community, but it's a way for us to ensure that with them present in this island and this community being able to provide services to everyone, including them, is that we have the resources available. And that is why it's incumbent on the United States government to give us those necessary resources as outlined on the Compact Impact Treaties. If you can recall the testimony from that individual that spoke again passionately against this legislation, there was also perception that the anger, and I call it anger, that for some reason maybe we're not patriotic as a community towards the United States government, or we are somehow disloyal. That was my perception. Maybe I'm wrong, but I can't see it that way. In the public hearing, I did ask the gentleman what state he was from, and I didn't mean it to be an insult. He called it an insult, but I meant it as a comparison. And he did make mention that he was from, I think, the state of Oregon originally, or some of his parents. One of his parents may have come from Colorado. And I advised him that, especially when it came to Western states, there have been states in the Union that have launched legal action against the federal government for different reasons. So this is something that is not unpatriotic. It's a tool that is used in a democratic society. And whether it's a state that launches a legal action against the federal government or a territory, that is a remedy for a disagreement. And I did also make mention that though there have been several states that have launched legal actions against the federal government, it is interesting, especially when it comes to certain types of regulations that are imposed on states, and some of these regulations have gone through a process, not only regulatory, but statutory in manner as well. And for a state government to launch a legal action against the federal government for certain types of statutes that are imposed on them, or regulations imposed on them by the federal government, it's interesting to note that these states have senators in the U.S. Senate and have representation also in the Congress with congressmen and women in the House of Representatives. At least these states had some participation in the body that makes laws that maybe that particular state government has a problem with. Maybe that state also had an elector in the Electoral College that put in a president that has, through executive order or some other means, put through his cabinet, made a regulation that this particular state government has a problem with. So at least with that state, and this is what I tried to discuss with this gentleman, those states that have launched legal actions against the federal government, they had some participation in the process. For Guam, we don't have that. We've had, and whether it's from senators here, or the governor, or some of the department heads in the administration, or a collaborative attempt, we've talked to representatives of Congress, in Cadell's, we've talked to members of the administration that visit Guam and advise them of our issues on compact impact. We've sent out resolutions. But after that, there is no other recourse. We can't vote in the House of Representatives. We don't vote in the Senate. And we don't have an elector in the Electoral College that puts our president in office. With that, Guam just has limited means. And I think it's so important that because of that, and feeling that we have really disposed of all other options and tools available, there's nothing left but to file a lawsuit. Madam Speaker, I rise in support of this piece of legislation introduced by my colleague. I'm a sponsor of the bill, and I'm asking for the support from all my colleagues as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Caldwell. On the motion, are there any speakers? Speaker Ben, you are recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I have little mixed feelings about the bill. I'm in opposition to the bill. I don't think that the solution to an under-reimbursement of the compact impact is going to be resolved through our legal system. The only time we've been able to have an increase in the compact impact has been through the political system. And that's what our delegates there for. And I think that the opportunity to access that legal system a little bit more at a critical time in which we can get the most support to increase reimbursement is now. As you know, the amount of money that will be reimbursed to the people of Guam and the other territories and states that are affected by the immigration of these compact impact citizens, as you might want to call them, who are given access for work and educational purposes within the United States, is now. The division of the amount appropriated by Congress of approximately $30 million is now undergoing re-examination and will be recalculated. And we have some support, I think, to increase that amount during this recalculation period, because we now have more states within the United States in which have seen a greater migration through, and again, through not these individuals kind of just going to these different territories and states, but actually these states coming out there, the companies that operate in their states, going out to these islands and recruiting these people. They are enticing them to come to their states as cheap labor to work, and they are now looking to see if they can get reimbursed for the cost under the compact agreements. So really what we're seeing is an exploitation of these individuals by some of these companies. We saw the same thing happen in Guam, where we actually had, during the boom time here, not too long ago, companies going out to Micronesia, recruiting these individuals and bringing them here for employment with their specific organizations. So it's not like these people are just kind of like crawling up on our shores and showing up uninvited. These individuals all want a better life for themselves, and they want to be able to have the ability to earn a living. And we've really mischaracterized our neighbors here, I think, and unfairly characterized them. And yeah, maybe we didn't intend to, but that's the message we're sending out, I think, coming out of as a policy statement from this body, that we don't want these individuals, or at least we want them here because we went and we recruited them. Don't sugarcoat this thing and say that, it's all the federal government's fault that we're in this predicament in terms of carrying the burden, because these individuals and some of our own companies here on Guam have gone out and recruited them and brought them here because they couldn't find individuals on Guam willing to work for the wages that they're willing to pay these people. And these people, just over the weekend, I saw a guy, he works 5 days a week, and he's over cutting grass on a Saturday and a Sunday so that he can earn more money. That's the type of people we see out there. They're not all sitting under a coconut tree drinking beer and getting drunk. But yet we seem to characterize these individuals as that's where the burden comes from. It's from these people who come here looking for a better life and they can't make it. And the solution is not to sue the federal government. The solution is when we see these impact, we capitalize on that, and we work with the delegates and the elected officials in these other jurisdictions to try and increase the appropriation by Congress for the reimbursement. The last time I remember suing the federal government was on the maritime shipping case. Some of us don't remember that. That's the last time I followed somebody down that road. And what did we get? I never voted for those bills because it was futile. We thought that we were going to sue the federal government to reduce the shipping rates here on Guam and force these private companies to reduce the shipping rates. So we went and we sued the Federal Maritime Administration in terms of how they calculated rates. And we started out with this nice, great thing about we're going to save millions and millions of dollars, and we're going to recover millions and millions of dollars in overcharges by these shipping companies and so forth, and we were going to reduce shipping rates. And it started out with, all we needed was $50,000, I believe. And that's what we started out with. By the time we ended, I think we spent $4.8 million in legal fees, and we didn't get a damn reduction in rate of a penny as a result of that lawsuit. And that's where we're going with this. I hate to say it, you know, but that's where we're going. This is good money after money we don't have. Not good money after bad, but in my opinion, good money after money we don't have. Because this is not, to me, going to result in increased appropriation by Congress. You cannot sue Congress to appropriate more money. I don't believe it. I don't believe you can force Congress to appropriate more money. And that's really what we're asking the Congress to do. That's what we want the federal government to do, is to appropriate, and it's Congress. Because Bush can put in, or, you know, or even the new President Obama, who may be more sensitive than we are, and more sensitive to the needs of the state of Hawaii, where he was born and grew up and graduated from high school from. And he may put in his budget request more money for compact impact reimbursement without a lawsuit, just by asking him, pleading with him, convincing him, and so forth. But we can't force Congress through a lawsuit to appropriate more money. And that's where the money's going to have to come from, is an appropriation from Congress. Or, I don't know, does the president have transfer authority? Maybe he does. And maybe we can get it that way. But this $200,000 taken out of the, you know, highway funds, man, 200, I was driving the other night, and for the life of me, I just don't understand why everyone's saying we have $600 million in the bank in unspent federal highway funds, and we can't put some yellow lines down on the road so we can see which lane we're in. What is happening? And now we're going to take $200,000. Now we're going to take $200,000 out of these federal highway funds to sue the federal government, in which, in my perspective, and I'm just one here, and I'm you know, saying it as I see it, is not going to have any influence at all with regards to this. The money can't be paid without an appropriation from Congress, and the court can't order the Congress to appropriate more money. I don't believe it's possible. Well, maybe. You said it, I didn't. But I just don't see it happening, Madam Speaker. And I remind myself, you know, when I look at this, and it's well-intentioned. And maybe it's just a policy statement, but I don't see us having $200,000 of free money or extra money to make a policy statement on something that's not going to result. You know, maybe this is the one time where I say, well, maybe we should hire a lobbyist rather than a lawsuit. But our delegate is effective. She has been, she continues to be, and that's why I don't think we need $200,000 for a lobbyist. I say we just leave it to her. We support her. We help her. We're on her team. We're on the people's team. And that would be my approach to this, rather than appropriating the money. So I understand that the federal government has not met its responsibility. And the way to get it to meet its responsibility, in my opinion, is not through this lawsuit. It's through our concerted effort with the governor and our delegate to try and convince the federal government, Congress, in cooperation with Hawaii, who now has a homeboy sitting in the White House, California, who now, see that when they recruited all these people, Kentucky, Arkansas, where these young individuals have been recruited out of their home islands, sent over there, put up in squalor living conditions in some respects, not paid enough money and not given health care, and therefore they have to depend on the state programs to help them meet their health and educational requirements. And they're no different than any other citizen in that community. But they see an opportunity with regards to the agreement that the federal government has signed with these states, that the states will be reimbursed for the impact that they have. And so this is really a subsidy to those businesses who have gone to these islands and lured these people with promises of better living, schooling, pay, etc. And then these individuals find out that it's not all bed of roses. And so they have to depend on state programs. They have to. They're not being paid enough. They're not given health care. And so they resort to that, and yet they continue to remain employed. And it's to work with those delegates and those representatives and those senators from those states to convince them that the solution to the impact that they face is an increase in the compact reimbursement fund from the current $30 million that is now just shared by Guam, the CNMI, American Samoa, very, very minimal, $8,000, I believe, and Hawaii. And if there are more states that are going to request, the solution is not to divide that $30 million, by now 6 or 7. It's to increase the $30 million to account for the additional costs in the additional states where these individuals have been recruited to work in. And so while I commend my colleague for being tough on this issue, I don't believe that spending this amount of money is the way to resolve the problem of the under-reimbursement. And so therefore, I can't support taking critical public highway money where we can't even get lanes that are visible at night when it's raining so that we stay in the right lane and we drive safely, or at least it's not happening, taking it out of that and putting it into this and so forth. On the other matter, Madam Speaker, I guess now in the bill as amended, where we had put in the phrase on sovereign immunity, my review of the legislation that have been passed with regards to this financing of the landfill issue, and of course the $20 million line, is that language is already in earlier laws that authorize the $20 million line of credit on this sovereign immunity. And that Bill 402, when it was passed, amended only one section of the loan parameters, and that is that the one section was the terms and conditions of the note, where it went from being a non-general governmental obligation to being a general governmental obligation, where it went from being prohibiting security or pledge of Section 30 to allowing the subordination of Section 30 as a pledge, as a subordinate pledge to this. And then we added compact impact. But the other sections of that law which authorized the $20 million and the bond and the borrowing already had another section that allowed for the waiver or the waiver of sovereign immunity. So while I believe it's unnecessary in my review of the previous legislations, it was not included in 402 because 402 only amended one single section of 383. And in 383, the sovereign immunity clause is already included in there. But it doesn't hurt to do it here on this bill, but I think it's unnecessary, and I may be willing to vote for that provision in another bill, but not on this one. And that's the only reason why I raised that matter. But again, Madam Speaker, to conclude, this effort of suing the federal government, I go back to just a picture-perfect duplicate of this situation on the maritime case. And if it wasn't 1.8, I think it was $8 million. I can't recall, but I know that our final bill on that, which started out with a $50,000 appropriation, you know, and then they came back and asked for another 250. Then they came back and asked for 800. Then they came back and sent us the balance of the bill, which was in the millions. And we didn't achieve what we thought and what was presented to us as being achievable, the reduction in shipping rates and the recoupment of the overcharges by the shipping companies. And we just ended up wasting millions of, you know, critical resources that we don't have. And I'm afraid that this will lead us down that same path. And for that reason, Madam Speaker, and for the reasons I've articulated with regards to the recalculation of this, is an opportunity for us to increase the reimbursement, I think in coordination with our delegate and the other states that are affected, to increase that appropriation level, because that's where it's going to have to come from. And so I cannot support this bill. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much, Speaker Band. Are there any other speakers on the motion? Then I would allow the author to close.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I want to thank my colleagues for speaking both for and against. I appreciate the democratic process that this body goes through to make their decisions, to deliberate matters, so that their concerns can be brought to light, so that we can, you know, as a body collectively, we can think and we can hear different sides. You know, some people ask, how do I stand the criticism that is dished out, that is doled out, with regards to legislation that I may introduce and how it's spoken on the floor. I says, that's not criticism for me. For me, what that provides is discussion on things that probably weren't thought of, or people see it differently. And it's pretty obvious, maybe, that my good colleague from Barragata and I, although we can both agree that we probably lived in the best village on the island, we may not agree on the route that we need to take with regards to this action. But Madam Speaker, there are many times that this body itself and members of this body took action had to take legal action. And as a result, they took legal action as a result of many years of frustration in the process, in the system that is put in place to be able to get things done. My good colleague and co-author of the bill from Haiti, had mentioned that other jurisdictions other than ours use this same process. That's why the process exists. That's why the judicial system exists. And so that if there is some concern and some cause for concern with regards to and in this case, the reimbursement for the costs that we've expended, and using that body as that body has been used on numerous occasions. As a matter of fact, Madam Speaker, again, as I had stated in my opening statements, one of the concerns that we've got here is we've got to figure out where we're going to get upwards of $202 million as a result of a lawsuit that the federal government has filed against us for the violation of a federal law. The last time I checked, Public Law 99-239 and Public Law 99-658 are public laws, are federal laws. So if they can sue us for a violation of one of their laws, why can't we sue them for a violation of one of their laws as well? And really, if you look at the legislation here, and I understand and I recognize $200,000 when you're talking about the scheme of things and what may be occurring may not be enough. But in my discussions with the Attorney Generals, one of the things that I told her is, look, if it's not a lawsuit that we need to go down, do the legal research, ma'am. You are the chief legal officer for this island. We want to give you the opportunity and the resources to conduct the research on the best means available, to get the reimbursements. And I need to emphasize this on the reimbursements because I am not talking about anything in as far as action prospectively. I'm not talking about actions or monies that we could be obtaining next year as a result of a census survey that is currently being conducted now, which, by the way, yes, it's being conducted right now, ma'am. But all indications are probably as a result of the census survey and as a result of the new information that's being brought to light of the impact of these freely associated citizens, that there are going to be other jurisdictions that are going to be tapping into that money, into that $30 million pot. Is $14.2 million the amount of monies that we're going to be receiving after this survey? I don't think so. There's going to be other areas. A powerful jurisdiction called Hawaii, who they have not hidden the fact that they felt that they should be getting more of that reimbursement money of the $30 million pot than we have, than we do. When we talk about the process and we talk about trusting into the system, we're going up against a giant here for things that are going to be prospective. What this legislation and what this bill proposes is for the Attorney General to look at actions, on what actions we could take to get reimbursed money we've already spent, not money we intend to spend, money we have already spent, to provide the services in behalf of the federal government to the citizens of the freely associated states. And you know, ma'am, this legislation is in no way attacking those good citizens, those individuals that come here. Again, they've come here because of the opportunities that have been presented to them, that have been made available to them by the federal government. We just happen to be holding the bag. And we've been holding the bag for far too long. We've had 23 years of begging, of asking, of pleading, of negotiating, of trying to get the proper reimbursements for this. It's time that we take this conversation, this discussion, to the next level, as we have done in numerous other occasions. And so I can appreciate the concerns that were expressed. But that being said too, ma'am, again, this discussion has to be brought to that next level. We can no longer mortgage the lives of our people over the next 30 years and on a bond borrowing measure or going out into a market right now that is in shambles so that we can provide the basic services to our people. Over $60 million a year, ma'am, was spent in the last 23 years to be able to provide these services. And at best, we've received $14.2 million. And mind you, that $14.2 million wasn't just something that came since 1986 to present. Back in the early days of the Compacts of Free Association, it was very lucky if we got even $1 million. But yet we still had to provide those services. We were mandated to provide those services. And if we didn't provide those services, there'd probably be another lawsuit. The U.S. federal government versus the government of Guam. What I'm asking is change that title around. Let's get back the money that is owed to us. Let's take this discussion to the next level. Let's continue to work with our congresswoman. Let's continue to work collaboratively as a legislature to work with the executive branch. Nothing here says that we got to stop that. This is just another another method. But we've got to take that discussion to the next level. Our people of Guam deserve it. They need it. We need it, ma'am. This is not a want. We don't want to sue them. We need to because of all the money we've already spent. So with that, ma'am, I ask again from my colleagues for their support on this piece of legislation to take this discussion to that next level. And with that, I ask, ma'am, that this bill be placed in third reading.
On the motion to place Bill 385 as amended on the floor. Are there any objections? No objections. There being none, it's ordered. Let me see. We're now in Bill 395. Senator Espadon. 397, I'm sorry, 397. That's not, you don't have an amended version, do you? Oh, yes.
Yes, we do, Madam
Substitute, yes.
Speaker. And so I therefore move for this body to accept the Bill 397 as substituted.
On the motion to
By the committee.
accept without objections, so ordered.
And I also make a motion to place Bill number 397 EC as substituted by the committee into the third reading file.
Okay, would you like to discuss it?
And I would like to make a few comments, Madam Speaker.
Okay, please continue.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this is an act that would help the Guam Water Works Authority to, in essence, repair those necessary repairs to get the moratorium lifted. Now, the original bill went through a public hearing. There were areas of some concern by my colleagues at the public hearing, and that's the reason for the substituted version. One of the issues with the original bill was that it wasn't moratorium specific. Some of my colleagues felt that one of the contentious issues here was the waiver of the procurement laws to GWA. And again, my colleagues who were there expressed an interest that if they would definitely be interested in supporting this bill if it could be moratorium specific. And that's exactly what we did in crafting the substitute version. The other concern that arose out of the original bill was a sole source issue of whether GWA would be given the authority to just do a sole sourcing on these projects. And of course, GWA at the public hearing said no, they do not plan on sole sourcing. But just to make sure that that's the case, again, we included that language into the substituted version so that it will not be sole sourcing. And as a result, we have the substituted version, Madam Speaker. And again, we all understand that time is of the essence in trying to lift this moratorium with the economy, the state of the economy as it is, and going forward in 2009, we definitely have to provide for greater growth opportunities within our community. And by allowing GWA to go ahead and address those areas of concerns, those bottlenecks in essence in terms of our infrastructure, to be able to let some of the development projects back onto the drawing board, I ask my colleagues for their support in passing Bill number 397 as substituted. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
On the motion, are there any speakers? So on the motion then to place Bill 397 as substituted by the committee on third reading, there being no objections, so ordered. Bill number 368, Senator Blas, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm going to see this was, I think it was substituted.
Yes, it is substituted.
Madam Speaker, I move that we accept Bill number 368 as substituted.
On the motion to accept Bill 368 as substituted by the author, there being none, so ordered.
Thank you, Madam
Senator
Speaker.
Blas.
I move that we, Bill 368 as substituted by the author, be placed in the third reading, but before that, I'd like to be able to discuss this briefly.
Please continue.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, back in the mid-1980s, there was a move by the government to be able to establish a protective security zone around what facility we call the Adult Correctional Facility up in Mingilao, the Department of Corrections. And in that process, in that bill, what it provided was basically that a 500-foot perimeter buffer zone around the facility be established. And that back then, this body authorized the exchange or the outright purchase of the lands that were affected by this new buffer zone for the government to be able to purchase or exchange the properties that are owned by landowners around this. Since then, ma'am, what has happened is technology has basically changed. And really the need for the land to establish that buffer zone was greatly diminished and greatly reduced. And as a result, and prior to that too, there were a few families that were, for lack of a word, victims of this process, because their properties, of which have been in their possession for many, many years, now were being forced to have to deal with a government that would wanted to purchase or exchange this land for other properties of which was foreign to them in other areas. And in some cases, the properties or the exchange of the lands did not meet the actual land size that the property owners were giving up. That as well, along with properties that were across the street, and when I say across the street, is if you're familiar with the road that is adjacent, that travels adjacent to the Department of Corrections, the My Road, there were properties that were across that major thoroughfare that fell under that security zone. Well, fast forward now to 2008, and a number of these families still were not entertained by the government so that their lands could be exchanged, or that the governments can purchase these lands to provide the security zone. And now the government, in letters that were submitted, in research that was done, letters that were submitted by the Department of Corrections, the director, that the lands that were across the street from the Department of Corrections, on the other side of my road, were no longer necessary to meet the buffer zone, the security buffer zone requirement. So what this bill provides, ma'am, and the reason why it was substituted is because originally, when this bill was put together, it was so that it can address the concerns of one family that was greatly affected by this buffer zone and this land transfer that was supposed to happen but never did. But since the introduction of this bill, there were other families that also who had properties adjacent to the original family that came to our office for assistance, that also said that their properties were also affected by this same predicament. So what this bill provides, ma'am, is after many years that this land has been taken away by the government for the purposes of establishing a security buffer zone, which is no longer necessary, and the government has, both the Department of Land Management and the Department of Corrections, have no contentions, have no reservations, as a matter of fact, also approve that these lands should go back to the rightful family owners, that this process, this legislation, does so in doing this. And I want to thank, too, as well, my two colleagues who also co-sponsored this legislation with me. I want to thank Senator Ben Pangilinan and Senator Eddie Calvo, who also did this. I think I'm missing one more person that asked. Oh, and my sister. Okay?
We've been disowned.
Okay? Tina Rose, Senator Tina Rose Muñoz Barnes. Okay? No objections to that, so go ahead and put that.
So, yes, are there any objections?
There's no objection.
Being none, so ordered.
Okay, thank you. So with that, ma'am, that's what this bill is for. It's so that we can right a wrong that has been done to these families for many, many years. And with the approval and with of my colleagues, you know, the families can actually enjoy Christmas and have a blessed and prosperous New Year, because we're giving them back the lands that were taken away from them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Blas. On the motion, are there any speakers? There being none, so on the motion then to place Bill 368 is substituted by the author in third reading file. No objections, therefore it's ordered. We're going to take a minute recess.
Yeah, God's spot.
That's why I go there. Let's vote and adjourn.
What are we waiting for?
Vote or adjourn sounds good to me. I second that. So we come back tomorrow.
Hey, I can add what we got. I'm gonna have Bill 370 and 371.
Let's just vote and go home.
And Tina has, she wants to put 394, 31, and 225.
And then some easy ones, 370 and 371. Oh, I'll get you the computers. Here, let me get them.
And my pharmaceutical fund,
McDonald's is my kind of place, I happy place. You know what I'm talking about? Real fun, he's like.
Hey, Bill, Ben, you know that many that you're proposing for the pharmaceutical fund to make sure that it's...
371.
Then goes to they charge off against it might be in
370, 371, they already have the computer.
Okay, that's how they start.
Okay.
Yeah, 370, 371.
That's what I want to say. And they said that there's
No problem?
no.
I like that better.
So we reduce no. You know the accounts payable.
Yeah.
No. No what? No more bills. Then we can put my two bills on. Mr. Yokozaki told me this morning he's going to die and he's not going to make it through the 30th.
Okay, you want to do an annexation, Mr. Yosemite, you built one piece of property at the DOC that was already exchanged. Then somebody who got that, and you can share it.
That's right, I'm making meeting. I'm taking my super with me.
It's live? Ayan. Siguro na ti malangko. Oo.
Let's vote. Let's vote yes. Let's vote. Let's vote yes.
Oh, by the way, Ben, your maritime costs $12 million. What is what?
That's what I thought. I thought it was 12 billion.
Yeah.
I wanted to yell it out.
I thought it was 8.
You just.
Mine, so those three bills.
Okay, yes, she saw me in the river, she never picked me up, and she picked you up. You gonna push me further down? Tina, stop already. So what do we do?
We're adding some bills into the second.
No more.
No more. You want to check these bills?
What, you want to make me go for reconsideration so you can get to 3?
I passed the first time to get the consent, I was turning over to this route. Passed and it goes through.
Are there any real
The following thing after I joined the pharmaceutical fund. The pharmaceutical fund. 405.
Company 373.
That'll help to, my power
Okay,
bill.
guys, come on for tomorrow, okay? What are the critical bills that we want to put on tomorrow?
Nothing. Stop already.
Wait, they're saying the pharmaceutical bill.
Stop already.
Pharmaceutical.
The pharmaceutical fund.
It's gonna be an amendment, but.
Yeah, because that thing, their contract, 394.
Because that'll make Ben just, he should make sure.
Get all that MIP out of the way, get off the book.
Okay, whatever. Guys, that's the only really critical bills until tomorrow.
They're critical. That's only 370, 371.
Yeah, we gotta see at 394. We gotta do that, we gotta.
Madam Speaker, is there a reason why you're not seeing your turn to school bill?
No, because there's one more language that Ben wanted me to check with, and we're checking with retirement about the workers, but the way the bill is written is that they all are still going to farm employees, but it's talking about the unfunded, contributions. It's not gonna affect their.
Oh, man, I don't know. Good luck on that one, though, man. I mean, tourist arrivals going down, and then we're gonna make that case? That's a bad case to make right now, man.
Then we're gonna drive the container over to the new office. She's not,
Okay, Rory, so just we go to the bills and then we recess until tomorrow.
to what time?
Yeah, he's got those two.
394. Okay?
The
What's
legislature is back in
225?
session. Senator Respicio, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Notwithstanding the House rules, I move that we revert back to motions.
On that motion, without any objections to order, Senator Respicio.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to place at the top of the second reading file Bill 394, Bill 403, Bill 370, and Bill 371.
I understand also there's 405, which is the pharmaceutical. 403. Please double check the number. $370, $371 to $394 and $403. On the top of second reading. 403.
Here, you want to do?
Not horrible.
We can get the Jesse's office is working. Did you want to do this one? And Madam Speaker, those bill numbers are correct. And to put at the also on the second reading file, Bill 290, Bill 289, and Bill 290.
I understand Senator Muñoz Barnes was saying there's a 225.
Yeah, she said it's dealing with government vehicles. Didn't we just move government vehicles back?
We're going to take a minute recess.
After Bill 305? No, after 289, 390, and then 248.
No, no. 403, not 405. That's why I said no. That's why I was thinking not 405. When the man dies, I don't want it on my conscience. He feels like I'm snuffing it.
First. Yeah. 255. What's the number 255? 255.
Okay, so then my motion would be to put in the bottom of the second reading file for everything. So this 255 would really be.
Okay, so after 371, these four will go between 371 and 380. Fuel efficient? Is that what you said? Well, that's the 255 process? Let's do 255.
Boy, Raging Royal's not here. He always complains that.
Yeah.
He's not here. Can somebody move his bills up? He's not your party standard bearer?
Yeah.
Your party standard bearer?
Rory, how do I send that to you?
Get out here to
Yeah, just go into the history. Just open your thing and look at the history. Hurry up because we're trying to decide which one of the two is the blue or something. I'm becoming confused in the blue history and
I just got a call, they're saying that the lady just called, get Kevin and, her name and asked, and she wants to expedite this, she was hoping we would all on that bill today.
I don't have a problem. I just hope you have 8 votes for it.
Why, you're laughing, so that means you're not voting for it, because you're laughing?
No, I said, I told them I was gonna vote for it. I didn't hope they're, I
You
just
have to
hope
vote
there's 8
for it,
votes for it.
okay, Frank, you have
Yes.
to vote for it.
Let me get,
That amendment made his bill ugly.
That's a lot, Marie.
Can we check, because the senators are around, if we can vote for the bill to get them out voting, or do that? At least this one? Oh, but Teresa's not here to reverse it.
Why not?
She's not here, she's sick.
They just pushed
And we just found out Saturday she was ill. She's not returning, but that we can't vote in.
Oh, shucks.
if they want to vote because of the government, that amendment, the government, if they wanted to, they need it, do they need it today?
Can we just vote on what we have on the top of our desk and not come on? Oh, well.
You snooze, you lose.
Get these cakes out of here, because I keep eating them.
You want to put it in there?
No. What?
Tina, is it 255 or 225?
225.
Is there any of these bills that we can just move down?
Yeah.
Any deal we moved out?
Yeah, rather than recessing early?
Yes, they can.
Yeah, so we make the motion in this order, and then maybe she's ready to move
Are
her
you
two
ready
bills.
with your bill?
Just talk a little bit about it.
The legislature is back in session. Senator Respicio, you are recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Notwithstanding the House rules, I move to reorder. I move to add the following bills on the agenda, and and to reorder the agenda as follows. So it'll be Bill 248, 305, 244, 259, and then to add the bills 225, 394, 403, 370, 371, 289, and 290. Want me-
On that motion, without any objections, so ordered. Do we have it? We're going to take another recess and wait for the committee report.
So these are on top of the second reading then? This is the I know, but the original motion is to, if they're not ready, they're not gonna do
Just after I told her there was no way anywhere left.
Dina, man, your 225 is not gonna be SEC 15.
What? It's not.
I found out that there are two other bills, the standards and everything that is all separate. Okay, we're ready.
I'm going to take all of them off.
397, can I have that bill? Can I have a bill up here? Why you give it to the ones who nobody's there? Give it to the ones who are present first,
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
and then the ones who are absent, then we'll give them later.
The legislature is back in session. Senator Tina Munya Barnes, you are recognized for bill number 394.
Sidos Masi, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I move that we move 394 to the third reading, and I'd like to speak on behalf of the bill as has been introduced.
So it's not a substituted version?
No
Try-
substituted
try-
version.
Okay, so on the motion then to place, and you would like to speak briefly?
Yes, I will.
Please.
Madam Speaker,
continue.
again, this Bill 394 is an act to approve the lease by and between the government of Guam and the Peleliu Club of Guam. Again, based on the findings from the legislature, jurisdiction was with the United States Air Force, and that certain control of property was referred to as the Harmon Cliff Line. And for many decades, the Peleliu Club had a lease agreement with them. Eventually, however, when U.S. Public Law 103339 required the relocation for these nonprofit organizations to be turned over based on Executive Order 9813, the transfers of this property was given back to government of Guam under a formal lease. And fast forward, moving the Public Law 2218 and 2547 mandated that all leases between nonprofit organizations and the government of Guam must be approved and come to this august body so that they could lease. The Peleliu Club of Guam has complied with all the rules and regulations of the governing lease with the government of Guam pursuant to Public Law 2547. It's come to this body. There was a public hearing on this, Madam Speaker, and all those who testified in support of this and asked that that this bill to authorize the approval of the lease with the Peleliu Club and the government of Guam. I ask that my colleagues support the same. Madam Speaker, as you will note, based on the bills, all the proposed leases and the documentations and the support from the necessary government entities and the full support of the nonprofit organizations from Peleliu showing their intent and the usage and their scope of the lease agreement is intact and is attached with a copy of the bill. So again, I'd like to thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak in support of this bill, and I ask that my colleagues support the same.
On the motion to place Bill 394 to third reading without any objections, so ordered. Do we have any other bills? Do we have 403? Senator Blas? Sergeant at Arms, can you please make sure that the members have bill number 403? And can you call Senator Blas? Senator Blas, 403. Senator Blas on bill number 403.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, before I can get into the discussion on Bill 403, there was a discussion I was having with one of my colleagues, Senator Panglin, and I am trying to locate him right now. So, for an amendment to this, and then, so I can request to go ahead and.
Get a minute recess.
Okay, Senator Calvo on bill 370. Do you have the committee reports as well?
Where's that?
370.
Yeah, where is it? Let me come.
We're going to take a minute recess.
Everybody says they're ready, but when it's time for them to move to 370, why are you supposed to be? Why are you talking You're different. You're waiting for your bill.
And you guys are going to be laughing all the way when it gets to 289, 290.
Laughing, no, that's going to be that's enough to bring the initiative back.
Guaranteed. 370.
I hope his cable's out in his house. There you go again, making one person stop for the legislative process. You got it? 777-442. I was teasing Frank. I said, there you go, letting one person stop the legislative process again. Yes. We did talk about your bill. get a room.
Get a room? We'll video it.
You can just get a room.
Everybody will contribute.
Oh, wow. Wow, that's a cow or something else.
The DJ will have to pay for the tax. He made this suggestion.
See if it costs Ben to come back.
I think I'll get you back here as soon as we talk about 403. Okay, where now is Frank? What a good exercise, Dan, back and forth.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. We're gonna get you in shape. After these, then go back to Okay, Frank, Dan's here, got his name.
I'm happy now because I just got a phone call. My grandkids are coming home.
Okay, congratulations.
Yeah. My querida.
Another issue, resolve it.
I'm waiting for them to resolve it. I already, because I said things. Why did I have to do all the runaround?
Sue them. Sue the court.
Yeah, that's good.
Can we see so we can
So it was really hurting. I couldn't put my legs up. So with that, I managed, and usually the wooden thing, that really helped me.
We done? We go home?
He's just right out the door. He's just right out the door. I don't see him out there. Let me go get him. I see three people.
Don't mind the speaker that way.
Oh, outside the other door.
Yeah, his house door or his car door, which is not inside not anywhere near the legislature.
It's a door.
Yeah.
Hey, have some cake.
Hey, you know how much can no more.
They can touch me over the one, right? That, Rory, the other one, they can touch that one.
Hey, where'd you get that passion
No,
fruit
they
last
did it.
night?
You can take it back.
That came, under, one is on the cart.
Well, I know, but I saw it on the table. But there was fast food on the table, and I ate a couple there. Sweet.
So
This is
that,
good.
oh, that one then came, let me see. Oh, my,
Be careful, be careful.
Really, huh?
How did you get it through customs?
oh, but it's a relative.
Why did you hide the cake last night? Why did you hide the cake last night?
No, we should.
I was waiting as long as I could, and I never got a piece, man.
Oh.
No, we had 5 sheets, you left early, that's why.
No, I didn't. I left after the dancing.
My dear, the cake was out, because I cut it before I danced.
Remember, it was under the table when it was hidden.
So that 5 sheets, my dear, and that's why I got 2 left now.
And now you want to take one back.
No, I'm not taking one back, I'm sending it over to Santa Rita,
use out of it.
You got one right that's not touched, right?
It's not.
Okay, that's the one I'll send then.
Don't worry, we can be disruptive.
A little bit of mayonnaise on the side.
Then can we all sign the box? We're just going to a road certificate.
That's right.
Condolences. Can we all put our campaign stickers on the box? Let's put some. Will they send over?
Hey, see that double thing on there?
Even me. Juicy. Double. 10. Independent.
I don't want to be asked to put any red ones on right now. I'm independent. So you saw that in the parking lot. That's all you got to do when you leave.
He doesn't even have a 2010.
Yeah, independent.
Don't go there. Right. The governor will share his life. Want to bring it back?
Is it passed out? Is it passed? You said it,
Let us move. 154, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Right, sorry.
We're on the
Oh, his bill.
I'm ready.
Who's next?
Well, you were, you missed it, so we
I was
pushed it all the
empty.
way down again.
I was in the little boy's room.
Well, you're a big boy, I don't know what you're doing in the little boy's room.
It's little.
Don't wash your hands.
Remember that time? we
That's
were
what the
being
men
off?
said.
Remember that one time you ran out of bathroom? You shook your hand and said, "The good thing I was in the bathroom."
No, I said, thank God you were left.
Or something else.
You're still trying to fight.
No, 51. For 51?
Yeah, to see if I don't look it up. GBB says no, because even Diego said it was okay.
That would be a perfect bill for the income to
Oh, thanks.
Why do you think I wanted to get rid of the marine preserves thing?
The legislature is back in session. Senator Blas for a motion on bill number 403.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, Bill 403, basically an act to provide,
A bill motion to place.
I did
Is
that
that
earlier, ma'am.
amendment?
I did that earlier, and I asked to discuss it,
Okay, all right then. Okay, so,
and then we asked for recess.
okay.
Okay.
Thank you. So
So-
you are going to discuss it.
Thank you, ma'am. And I'll be short on this because I think there was a great amendment that's going to be proffered by my colleague from Barragata here. What this basically helps is to clarify the intentions of the pharmaceutical fund to the Guam Memorial Hospital. This bill is introduced at the behest and the request of the Guam Memorial Hospital Board of Trustees. And so I asked my colleagues' support in being to pass this legislation.
Okay, on the motion, the Speaker Ban, Pangilinan, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I wanted to offer an amendment that I think would result in just a accounting treatment of the revenue and the application of that revenue on the hospital books so that it would also have a positive effect on the general fund side of the ledger to reduce liability of the government of Guam for the perennial underfunding of the MIP and Medicaid program. As you know, the bill as introduced is an accounting treatment. It's not a cash treatment. And the restriction of the funds continue to apply with regards that they shall be used for purposes of buying pharmaceuticals to support hospital operations. But rather than the hospital had passed a resolution in which they intended that they're going to use this to apply it towards the self-pay, which may or not be on Gov Guam, a liability of the government of Guam. We do know that the government of Guam incurs liability at the hospital that it's not able to make any kind of payment on because of the historic underfunding of the MIP program. So this would allow the treatment of this operating revenue from an accounting purposes to be applied towards services incurred by MIP recipients and enrollees, and if there should be any excess after that, it would go towards the Medicaid program. And then we would continue on the hospital side to try and collect from the self-pay, because the self-pay could be somebody who has a co-payment from insurance. That's self-pay. That co-payment is self-pay. It's no longer an insurance liability. It's a liability to that patient. And so the government the hospital can't continue to go after that patient. But the way it's originally written, the government could actually write off that co-payment while the 100% liability of the government of Guam for an MIP recipient who is qualified and enrolled in the program continues to be carried on to the books. So it would allow the shifting of the application of this to MIP services or bills for services provided and then Medicaid after that. And then it would, of course, so it would be to add a sentence after line 8, after the word prospectively in line 8. And it would read, the hospital shall apply the funds received being from the pharmaceuticals fund towards the payment of bills for services incurred by qualified MIP recipients enrolled in the program at the hospital. And then any funds remaining after such payments shall be then applied to the services provided to qualified recipients enrolled in the Medicaid program by the hospital. So it's for the services provided to these people by the hospital. And this would allow us on the general fund ledger side to reduce liability to the hospital for MIP and Medicaid, and the hospital continues to receive the $10 million for the purpose of purchasing pharmaceuticals. That purpose does not change at all. So it's a better accounting mechanism to be positive to both the hospital side and the Gov Guam General Fund side by helping us reduce our liability, and makes no material cash difference to the hospital itself. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I ask for the support of my colleagues.
On the amendment, are there any speakers? There being none, okay, the amendment passes. On the motion then to place Bill 403, would you like to close, Senator Blas? So on the motion then to place Bill 403 in third reading filed, there being no objections, ordered. Bill number 370, Senator Calvo, you are recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you for a little bit of thank you for allowing me the opportunity to continue on this bill. I'm feeling much more refreshed and relieved. And with that, Madam Speaker, I'd like to move to place Bill number 370 LS into the third reading, and I'd like to also discuss further on Bill 370.
Yes, you may proceed.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Can you please make sure that Senator Penguin has a copy of Bill 370? Okay. All right. Thank you. You may proceed then.
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the purpose of this bill is, again, the rezoning of particular parcel of properties within the municipality of Barrigada from an agricultural A to a light industrial M1. Again, I was approached as the author of the bill from the owners of the property. This is specific to Guam Bakery. And they were requesting, again, their assistance for the movement or the rezoning of this particular piece of properties to M1 for the purpose of constructing a facility to increase the existing capacity of their bakery operations and to process other food products for distribution. Madam Speaker, this particular bill, I believe, is a win for not only a local family that is doing business and participating in the growth of this economy, but it's also a piece of legislation that is a benefit to the community. And with that, I'm asking for your support and the members of this body's support. Again, the Dedido, there was some discussions with both the mayor of Dedido as well as Mingilao and Barrigada as to their, if they would have any problems or concerns regarding this particular piece of rezoning. And again, they have all shown their support for this rezoning change. There was also no objection from the neighbors of this property. Now, this particular property also has again, the blessing of the Department of Land Management, which did not have any objections since the rezoning is consistent with the existing M1 zoning in that particular area, and it's a location within the Guam International Airport's, zoning area. So with that, Madam Chair, it's a bill that, again, will allow an opportunity for a local family, local business to make best use of their property. It has the support of the mayors and the municipal councils and the neighbors, and it's a bill that also, again, will allow for the growth of our economy. So again, I'm asking for the support of my colleagues in the passage of Bill number 370 LS.
On the motion, are there any speakers? Speaker Ben Panglin, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I certainly rise in support of this legislation, knowing exactly where it's at. If I'm correct in this, it's the property located right next to Union 76 station on Airport Road. It's right above the underpass. It's on the bypass entry.
No, that's 271.
Oh.
This is 270. See, I understand.
Okay. I think I should just go back to my office.
Okay, so this is Bill 370 on the motion. Are there any other speakers? Okay, Senator Blas, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise in support of this bill. One of the things that, information to my colleagues in the discussions that were held during the public hearing, the properties that are adjacent to this property have already been zoned either commercial or M12 as well. So what this basically does is that this zoning or this request to rezone zones this consistent with the zoning that has already occurred in that area. Thank you.
Can we take a minute recess?
Completely surrounded, the properties that are surrounding it are owned, zoned, F 523.
But where is the property? Where?
It's on Bellow Road.
So when you're going on that, whatever that highway is, you turn right to the middle road.
Remember where Marcel, you're the same area where Marcel.
Where there's like a two Bellow Road, the old Bellow Road, and then the new one that was.
The old Bellow Road. It's along the old
So when
Bellow.
you go in there in that road,
Yeah, it's on the right side.
is it,
You know the scrap yard, remember there was like a scrap area there?
is that the one before it forks off? You go to Bellow Road and then it forks off, like one going to the Chinese temple, the other one go down here.
Yeah, the top part, but.
Cali.
So it's on the right.
Right.
So before you take that fork off, that's where it's at. That's probably.
Yeah.
But aren't there homes, beautiful homes right up there?
Completely
No,
surrounded
the
by.
homes are on the other side. On the other road. There's Bellow, then there's another road.
Nah, that doesn't make sense, because I,
You know where Yama's bus company's at?
This came out of your committee.
That's funny.
I see because it came up with me that I know exactly where it's at.
You know where Yama's bus
I
company's at?
reported it out only the way, you know,
Well, it should be. They're all industrial M1, they're all M1. There was a scrap yard in one area. There was
Before you make a right turn to those that can pull in
But
to
that's
the EFS,
commercial. It's not for sale.
on the right.
Joke.
Right there.
Don't get caught in that crash.
There's only one apartment around.
I got a couple of college educations, and actually I have three
On
college
the left side,
educations. I can't pay for M1 now.
so on that road, when you go in, I know there's a beautiful home on the left.
No, that's the other road. You're talking, there's two different roads, man.
No, that's the.
You know, I should have just left well enough alone.
There's a nice house there that has that, what you call that,
Can you get the map? Judy, it's surrounded by zone, by M1 zone. Hit the map. Thank you. But it's completely surrounded by M1 zone. That's why land management
there's
approved
an
it.
apartment building there, and then there's a house across the street.
This is your economic zone.
DJ.
Any, you like this zone?
what?
Yeah, they have beautiful homes there, big houses.
It's in,
They like the Joe.
and,
Free
Yeah,
Joe.
I'm kidding.
yeah, it's in.
Just free Joe every weekend. You eat with Joe.
And I don't understand the testimony saying that it's, airport flight. Now I heard that. But I doesn't mean because I hear it that I know exactly where it's at, but no map was provided, otherwise it would be attached here.
I love it. I love your kind of chairmanship. least he's willing to share with you. Because you have to wake up in the morning and smell a lamp. Well, he's smelling bread.
I know we had the maps. I don't know whether we didn't.
You know, it's not so much the idea about that I'm totally always against the rezoning, it's the process is my concern. Not having to go through the process.
See, it says right here in the letter from land management, the activities here are consistent with M1 in the surrounding area. Madam Speaker, it's in the letter from land management.
Where's the map?
There's an existing limestone quarry right next to it.
I'd like to know where the map is.
Is there a map? Do we have a map? Okay.
So we can see.
There's a quarry there.
You know, I
You want me to build my house in a quarry?
where does it say that?
It says it's right, the east adjacent property currently maintains an existing limestone quarry. To the southwest of the property is another one, is the zone M1, which is right in the, but, so they're surrounded. See, that's why they have no problem with it, because it's consistent with the property, east adjacent property, is 564.
See how far the houses are there?
Man, let me just speak on it while they're getting the map. I might as well speak on it. No, just say. They're getting the map. Want me to sing a song?
No, we, what?
And remember, Eddie, you never lose your cool.
Even when I'm singing a song.
One.
Yeah,
The
thank you.
legislature is back in session.
Yeah, thank you, Madam
Senator
Speaker.
Calvo, you would like to speak on the motion?
Yeah, again, and to close the, to close the movement of the bill on 370 to the third reading, again, the rezoning of this property is consistent with what has already been the activities that are in the surrounding properties and adjacent. Again, in the letter presented by Department of Land Management, to the east adjacent property of the subject lot is 5224-8, which is currently an existing limestone quarry. To the southwest of the property, which is lot 5223R91, is also zoned M1, and this is a light industrial pursuant to Public Law 22-163B. In fact, that particular rezoning to M1 was done through a legislative action in a legislative body that I was not even a part of. There's also lot 5223R93, which was rezoned M1 light industrial by the Guam Land Use Commission action of January 23rd, 1987. So as you see, since 1987, there has been a movement in this particular area and the surrounding area for a zoning for this type of operation. As a matter of fact, if you're to take a look at the purposes of this M1, this is not a quarry. This is not some sort of a facility for putting scrap metals and waste material. They are to be used specifically for the production of bakery products. So if there's ever I guess what you would call a cleaner industry for M1, it would be this bakery that will be building a production facility for bread, for mostly bread products. So again, Madam Speaker, I'm asking the support from my colleagues. This particular piece of legislation would expedite the movement and the zoning of these properties to be consistent with the surrounding area. It will assist this family and this business to move forward, expanding in their opportunities as well as, again, it is a win for the community in regards to economic growth and development. I'm asking for my colleagues' support with that movement, and I'd like to move to place Bill 370 LS in the third reading.
On the motion,
No objection.
Senator BJ, your hands up. Oh.
No
On the
objection.
motion then to place 370 LS in third reading, file,
objection.
there being no objection, so ordered.
Yeah.
Bill number 371, Senator Calvo.
Thank you
are
very much,
recognized.
Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, again, I'd like to move to place Bill 371 into the third reading. And earlier, the senator from Barrigada alluded to the purposes of Bill 371. This is a rezoning from agriculture A to commercial C in the municipality of Barrigada. And again, the mayors are in full support of this particular measure from both Dedido, Manila, and Barrigada. Also, the community. Now, this specific lot is owned by Concepcion Pablo. Now, this is the lot that was mentioned a little bit earlier on from the senator from Barrigada. If you were to look at that service station that the Union 76 station there right close to the overpass towards the airport side, this property is right behind it. And actually, it's a very thin sliver of property that runs between the service station, the underpass, the road, and then the airport property. It's a very slim piece of property, and with this very slim piece of property, to zone it to commercial, it would also be consistent with the purposes of that surrounding area. Again, this is a piece of property that is owned by a local family, and with that, because of the developments that have occurred within the surrounding area, in regards to a major road and a service station, and then of course the airport facility, the purpose for this particular piece of property would be best suited as a commercial type. And again, I'm asking for your support. It has the support of the mayors. There have been no objections by the surrounding community. And again, this bill would be a win-win not only for our local families, such as Mrs. Pablo, but also for the community. So again, I'm asking for your support for Bill 371, and I'd like to move to place Bill 371 into the third reading.
On the motion to place Bill 371 on third reading, file without any objection, so ordered. I don't have any more bills on my I do not have any bills on my second reading file. Sergeant at Arms, what bills do we have?
225. I just gave it to Tom to make copies. All right? Matt, you circulated the...
We're in recess.
Yeah, I already did that.
We did that already?
No, we're going to do it now. 225. Just
No,
wait.
Perelu?
Yeah, we did Perelu.
We did that already. Oh, we did it already? We did?
So where's the map?
Coming, wait.
See it going, you've been waiting for the map. Look at that. You said you're gonna speak and the map is coming.
Vic.
I actually went and looked at the one for 271 and 370, yeah, 371, but I did not see this one.
Time to move on the charter school, Madam Speaker.
Ma'am, remember we pulled the map out during the public hearing? No, you guys took the map. Your office took the map.
It would have been here if we had.
I'm not gonna say anything.
Let's fire ourselves all to call.
I know nothing.
Let's fire ourselves all to call. Yes, sir.
Let's go on this other bill.
Report out only.
GSA support.
Ready, my dear? The legislature is back in session. Senator Tina Rose Munya Barnes, you're recognized on bill number 225.
Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I ask that bill number 225 LS as substituted by the Committee on General Government Operations and Reorganization be accepted.
To accept, the motion is to accept bill 225. There being no objections, so ordered.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to move bill number 225 LS as substituted by the Committee on General Governmental Operations and Reorganization to third reading, and I'd like to discuss it briefly.
You may proceed.
Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this bill 225 as substituted is an act to amend subsections 5123A of Chapter 5 of Title 5 of the Guam Code annotated. This is relative to requiring the vehicles purchased or leased by the government of Guam be the most fuel efficient model available that will fulfill the intended governmental functions. And it specifically states, as the amendment is to include that the GSA shall purchase or lease all motor vehicles required for all government agencies as a fleet at least once every 3 years, and it specifies the procedure that the Chief Procurement Officer shall maintain a vehicle purchase policy that considers the total cost of ownership that includes but not limited to. And then it speaks to the intended purpose for which the vehicle was purchased, the purchase price of the vehicle, the U.S. EPA's estimated mileage rating in terms of the miles per gallon for the vehicle, the expected useful life of the vehicle, the cost of maintenance and warranties over the expected useful life of the vehicles, and any ratings or reviews from consumer rating companies on the performance, mileage and reliability of the vehicle. Madam Speaker, when this had its public hearing, the administrator for GSA came and supported this measure and said it adds on to the accountability and transparency, make sure that when we go out for the leasing of these governmental vehicles that we get our best and most efficient models available for the government's intended use. I ask that I'd like to thank you and the Vice Speaker for being a part of this sponsorship, and as we look at more transparency, accountability, we want to make sure that the vehicles out there that this government purchases is also not just more cost effective, but more fuel efficient as we look at saving the government from the roller coaster rides of the cost of fuel out there, and it's continuing up and down on it. We want to make sure that the government gets the best vehicle mileage rating for its intended use, and I thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak on this bill.
On the motion to place Bill 225 on the third reading file, are there any other speakers? There being none, so no objections, so ordered.
I got it right there. No, but I'm waiting for Dave to call me.
9 a.m. tomorrow? You don't have any other bills you guys can move down?
What about the school charter? Still here?
Senator Rees-Speaker, you recognize.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I move to recess till 9 a.m. tomorrow morning.
Okay, we'll be in recess until 9 a.m. tomorrow morning.